We will start. This is approximately a third down from the top of page 12 Dalet. We'll go back a couple of lines just to get a refreshment. The line begins Hazulas.
I have a quick question. Everybody's okay with the air conditioner noise?
It's actually a little bit, it's hard to be here.
I'm asking majority who wants it and who doesn't want it.
Whatever you guys want. I can hear myself talk.
It sounds low, it sounds like
Okay.
You can always get closer if you have trouble.
No more room for that.
Okay.
Let's try like this and.
So I said the beginning from the line begins Hazulas. That's about 10 lines from the top on page Chok Dalet. We are in the midst of explaining the deeper concept of Selim, which is even deeper than the principle of Oisez HaChakiko, which we already went through. This is Selim, this is the form that is the form of the Etzem itself. How can an Etzem have a form? And yet we're saying that there is such a thing as Etzem coming into a form. In principle, this is in HaChochma, and the Milo, this is in the Torah. Torah is called it Tzelem. Tzelem, the essence of Atzilus is Torah, because Torah is Chochma. And then we explain what's so special about Chochma. Because the principal difference between Moichin and Midas, which we discussed already, the terminology and so forth, the principal difference between Moichin and Midas is that Midas is only what's called a Gilui Ha'ora. It's a revelation of a Ha'ora, of a reflection. And that's why Midas is mainly pertinent for the Zulas, for outside, how it affects others. Moichin is for the personal orientation. Which means Moichin, this is the essence. This represents the essence. And we discussed this, explaining what is the essence and in what way do Moichin represent the essence. The essence, just to review briefly, the essence is the nefesh. Moichin, Ochma and Midas, these are all koiches from the nefesh. Yet, there's a fundamental difference between how the koiches of Moichin are related to the nefesh and how Midas are related to the nefesh. Midas become separate entities. Moichin, this is the very special quality of Moichin, of Chochmah, that yes, indeed, it's only an emanation from the Yetzim, but there is nothing lost in this transition, because there is no mitzvah, there is total beetle. It is transferring in a koyach form what the Yetzim is. It's the same. The sense that comes through in Moichin, and particularly in Chochmah, is the same degree of fundamental truth as it is in the essence. And this is why Chochmah, even though it's only a tzelem, it's only a form, because it's a koyach, but this koyach is a tzelem atzma. It represents the etzem because it is the same principle of truth as it is in the etzem. This is what's sensing in the Chochmah. Because it is a subtle thing and it's difficult to relate, I want to reiterate what we already said, and so that we'll be involved in this. The principle in this, how we can understand it, is that in every koyach, say for instance in touch, when you touch something and you know it's there because you are processing the experience of the touch. You experience the object, and therefore you're processing this piece of information, and it becomes real to you because you experience it. This Inyan, that it becomes real to you because you experience it, this is where the truth of this object is lost, because you're not taking it the way it is unto itself, you're taking it the way you're experiencing it. You are kind of, by your experience, this is how you relate to it. You're verifying it. And therefore you know of it only the effect of it. This is called Gilei Ha'ora. Only the effect of how it affects you. Chochmah, Seichel in general, Beseniha Seichel, and particularly Chochmah, it does not retranslate. It does not seek to experience what it recognizes.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, if anyone has a problem with it, we'll try. It was hard to...
It does not retranslate what it is. It accepts, it sees, it takes what is given, totally. What there is, what the truth is. The motion for this is, that we always point out, and it's a accurate motion, is sight versus hearing. Hearing is something which gets translated by vibration in the ear. Sight is a direct cognizance. You see what there is to see, nothing else. You don't translate it in the process of seeing. This is why, even though sight is also a koyach, it's only you are seeing something outside. You're not the object that you're seeing. You're seeing the object from outside. So it's only a transmitted information. But nothing is lost in transmission, because you see it because of its own truth, not how it affects you. And that is in HaChochmah. This is why Chochmah is called Tzelem. It's a Tzelem. It's Tzelem Atis. It represents the essence. Okay, so we're starting again. The line begins Hazulas. That the Meichin and Bechinas Atzmos HaOdom. Meichin, this is Mi Bechinas Atzmos HaOdom. Meichin is of the etzem of the person. Because what is contained in the Meichin, what is known in the Meichin, the Atzmos HaOdom, what the Odom is, the truth of the Odom. Lochein Hein Liyatzmei. And that's why this is for him. This is stays something internal. We also explained what meant Mi Bechinas Atzmos HaOdom. What is Atzmos HaOdom? And Meichin is of the quality of Atzmos HaOdom. The principle of Atzmos HaOdom is that Odom is principally the Nefesh, not the Guf. And Nefesh, presenting it briefly, Nefesh is the creator, is the source of the Nefesh. Nefesh is not a separate Metzias. Nefesh is the presence of the source of life. And this is why Yipach Be'apav Nishmas Chaim, that this is something which comes directly from its source. And therefore, the inyan ha'adam, as it manifests itself in a person's presence in the world, and how a person relates to the world, is that essentially the human being is uninvolved, is aloof from the world, is a separate presence. He's not part and parcel of the world, like the animal. He is present in the world only in the sense that he knows of it, and he can affect it, but not that he is dependent on it, because his real presence is not the world, but it is the nefesh. And this is why the Chokhmah, Chokhmah has that sense that the real, what reality does Chokhmah relate to, not to that which it's experienced, but from where it's coming from, the real truth. And this is just a review. We discussed it at quite a length in the last several classes. What?
We said that life cannot be defined. Can we say this?
In worldly terms, right.
Nefesh also?
Of course. Okay, so let's continue now. V'chein b'chol partzuf hagimul rishonos shabei zeh b'chinas atzmus. V'chein b'chol partzuf, in every partzuf, which means in every structure. A structure consists in 10 and a, so to speak, a pyramid of 10 elements. In every level, wherever a part of is to be identified, Hagimul Rishonos Shaboy, the top three, the first three elements, which is represented by Chokhmah, Bina, V'Da'as, Zehu Bechinas Atzmusei. That is the Bechina of its essence. This is what the essence of this part of is. Bechinas Atzmusei. We always struggle, try to understand the concept of etzem. Gimul Rishonos, this provided with this element, with this aspect that's called etzem. Bechinas Atzmusei. Coming from this vantage point, understanding that the Gimul Rishonos, that Chabad, that Chokhmah Bin Vadah, this has an element of etzem, we can kind of identify the concept of etzem a little bit more closely.
Can you explain the Bechain?
What?
The Bechain at the beginning of the phrase.
We just finished talking about Chokhmah and
I know,
Vadah.
but
A similar, just as over there in Atzilus, by a person, Atzmus or Adam, the same is in in every part of, in every structure. What is the Bechinas Atzmusei? What is it? There's a Bechina of its essence. What is an essence? An essence is that which has its own presence. It is not, as we always point out, not merely a reaction. It is its own presence, and if it is manifesting itself, if it acts, it is acting on the basis of its own initiation. Not because it's being pressed from outside. That's the essence. And this is the difference between the human being and the animal. The animal does not have initiation in its action. It's all instinctive, and it's all a response to some kind of a stimulus. The human being, whatever he does, there is the moichin element, which means He first decides that this is, identifies the Ayin that he is going to do, and decides that this is a proper thing to do, and that's when he acts. Therefore, he has an essence. The Gimel is Sheni Shebei, Hein Mi Bechina, Hein Zeo Bechinas Atzmus. This is the essence, the Bechina of the essence. Bechinas Etzem, we always point out, Bechinas means that it is not the real thing, it's only Bechina, it only has that, it qualifies as such. Because in fact, the Chabad, Chochmah, Mir, Das in the person, this is not the essence is the Neshama. But the Bechina, the aspect of Etzem is reflected in the Chabad. But the Chabad are koiches, coming from the nefesh. And we pointed out the other day, this is why all of a sudden they start talking about moichin. Moichin means the brain. The brain is altogether not part of the nefesh. Because this is not takidiyazim, this is only a recipient of the nefesh. But Chabad is such a perfect recipient that this represents an essence element.
With the mashal of seeing, a sight, which we have used to explain etzem, is that also applicable to das? The Chorah das implies how a person's reacting to it. So would that mashal of via be applicable to das as well? Because das appears that das is not just objective.
Das is not reacting. Das is not reacting. Das is the actualization of the Chochmah in the Din.
Good word.
This how we're saying that it's a reflection. Is it coming up later that we say it is Tura Atzmi? Seemingly we're saying it's more than a reflection. It is it itself.
Any koyach is a reflection. That's what we're trying to do. Chochmah is a koyach. But it's a tzura atzmi, so what we spent in tzura. Tzura is a reflection. But it's a tzura that is representative of an etzem. Normally a koyach, how do you define a koyach? It's effect. What it affects, how it affects the outside, how it affects whatever it touches. That's meant a koyach. Here we're saying that the koyach, it is a koyach, but what is the significance of that koyach? What is the aim of this koyach? To represent the Yetzir, and to be in Yetzir.
Still a representative, not etzem itself.
And it's only representative, it's koyches. If it were not, that's why we're saying moichi. The nefesh is not mislavish in the moich. Moich he takes only the ha'ora of the nefesh. But the ha'ora atzmis.
And when we come to say it is tzura atzmi, it's a reflection of.
That's right. It's a tzura. Tzura means a reflection.
Yeah.
But it's a tzura that has an etzem quality, bechinas etzem.
And this here is different from or deeper than what we had Chakika and...
this is different than Chakika.
On the
yes.
Klav.
Yes. Because Chakika and Klav, it has some kind of a message. But the message is engraved in stone. In the essence. There's no message.
Now
this
comes
is the
the
essence.
faculty that's no message. It's just...
That's right. It's just the reality itself.
Is this like the Evan Torah?
So why did we use the moshel of Hakika? Well, it's not really the message, it's not the essence at all.
With a stepping stone.
The stone was a stepping stone.
That's right. the Eben Toib is not a partsuf. It's not a tzelem. Doesn't have any form. We're talking about a form.
Isn't a valuable stone? Don't we use that as a muscle of like essential value?
Yes, but we are looking for essential value in a form level. In a tzelem. In koiches.
So Moichin is in this form.
What is a form?
It seemed like Chochmah was just kind of keli, form. Is a format thing?
You're supposed to take Chochmah with your Chochmah.
Yeah. Okay, let's look on that. Form. It's like we're saying fact.
Anything that you become aware of is already a form. How do you become aware of it?
So Chochmah, like sight, we become aware of it, so it has some kind of form.
Right. Okay, so because we interrupted, just going back to the end of the previous slide. V'chein b'chol parts. This is true in every partsuf. Even though it's a partsuf means a structure. But a true partsuf has gimel rishonos. Ha gimel rishonos shaboy. The first three levels, that's called Chochmah, Bina, V'das, Zeh Bechinas Atzmus. That represents the Bechina of its essence. In other words, the Gimel Rishonos are not from functional purposes. The Gimel Rishonos is for personal consumption. And this is the great fallacy of saying that what is Seichel? I'm going to learn engineering. Engineering is a functional element. You lose completely your personal. Who are you? And whatever relates to the lower madrigas, which means not in the etzem, hu hazayin tachtonis. This is what known as zayin tachtonis, the 7 lower madrigas. We know that the parts consists of 10, so the top 3, this is bechinas atzmusa, and the madrigas shalamato, this is zayin tachtonis. Bim kein, and thus hatoiro shehi bechinas chochma yilo datzilus. Since that the Torah, which is the bechina of chochma yilo of atzilus, harei zeh bechinas atzmus atzilus. Therefore, the Torah, this is the bechina of atzmus atzilus, the etzem of atzilus. Lihayois the iker atzmus atzilus hein hamoy. Because that being that the principle, the iker, atzmus atzilus, what is the essence of atzilus? In principle, not exclusively, but in principle, hein hamoichin, it is the moichin. What is moichin? We discussed it, and we just now learned the difference between Moichin and Midas. Atzmus or Atzilus, and the same thing is Etzem Odom. The principle, the Etzem of the Odom is what he knows to himself. What is the reality with which he orients himself? That's the Moichin. This is the Etzem Odom. Hagam. Okay, and therefore Torah is Asim Atzilus. Hagam the Biklolus, that although that in general Gam Bechinas Hamidas Atzilus Hein Gufei Shel Atzilus. That in real terms, the midas of Atzilus are also Gufei Shel Atzilus, are also part, and they also have Atzilus qualities. Brag Bechinas HaMalchus, only Malchus, the very bottom of Atzilus, He Sheira Shemokim Biyah Sheba Atzilus. This is where Biyah is beginning to be recognized. This is the Sheira Shemokim of Biyah. But this is Sheira Shemokim Biyah in between Atzilus. Avo Bechinas Zo, but the entire structure of Zo, Zayin, Zeir Ampin, that means Chesed, Gula, Tiferet, and so forth, Vayiker ad Hoi de Atzilus, and particularly till the level of Hoi, Yisoid already has to do with Malchus. But this is ad Hoi de Atzilus, Hu Guv Atzilus, this is the part of the body of Atzilus. So even though that this is the entire Zoh, almost is all the Guf of Atzilus, the essence of Atzilus. But still, the Proteus, and we break it down into more specifics. Atzmus ho Atzilus, hein amech, the Atzim of the Atzilus, this is the Moichin. So he doesn't go into great length over here to further discuss the Zayin Tachtoinos, how the others are also related to Atzilus. But he had a very simple term for this: Gilui Ha'ora. This is what the Zayin, the Guf Atzilus is Gilui Ha'ora. In other words, it's all basically incorporated in the Moichin element. This is why, in terms of the mashal of the human being, the human being also has Chabad, and then he has the Zayin Tachtenis and Midas. It is the characteristic of the human being that even when his midos are in full expression, they are still, there is a Chabad element that they are representing. They're not presenting their own presence. They don't go wild on their own. They're still the essence of the person.
The principle more of Shoylet Amalef is derivative of that principle, clearly.
Yes. I mean, Shoylet Amalef is Meir Shoylet Amalef is that the Moyer defines what the left should want. I'm talking about the step later when he already wants. He already gave vent, so to speak, to the left. So now the left takes off on its own. It doesn't.
No, because it's still Shoylet.
At this point, Shoylet Amalef, that's before the lev has been activated. But once it's activated, then it becomes a lev element. Then it becomes a heart element. That's why the heart is and there's excitement, there's pointless. So this, at that point, this is the effect of the Moichin, of the Midas. It is not that he is controlling the Midas. If he is controlling the Midas, it's not Midas. There is an element of Ahava and Yira and so forth, an actual feeling, but that feeling is imbued with an element of Moichin, a truth element. Into Gile Ha'ora.
So the middle don't run away on their own because they're still...
Sorry?
So the middle don't run away on their own because they're still an expression of the Moichin?
That's right. Because the Moichin is the principle of the human being. He's still a human being, even though he's in Midas.
Ha'ara.
Yeah. There's a Ha'ora of the human being.
Ha'ara, the diuk of Ha'ara means that it's a gilui of Meichin?
Right. It's a Gile Ha'ora of the Etzem. It's a Gile Ha'ora of the Etzem. Midas is a Gile Ha'ora of the Etzem. It's all part of the human being.
So it's a human middle.
That's right. They're human beings.
Why don't you call it Ha'ara of Moichin?
Moichin, okay, that's it. Moichin are only megaled midas. Moichin are not creating the midas. They're giving them a form, but they're not. The koya hamida comes from higher than that.
Higher.
What?
No, just the hierarchy is different.
Yeah. But there is a ha'ora of the etzem in the midas. Yeah. This is kind of, in our day, reminiscent of the Union, you know. In today's world, there is we were once watching a guy across the street getting all excited, and I said, well, he's acting like an animal. Just, well, don't you see he's enraged? As if he's enraged. That justifies for him acting like an animal. Okay. V'al kein ha'toira, and therefore, the Torah shehi chochma ilah, which is the chochma ilah, which is the supreme chochma, which is the chochma da'atzilus, he atzmus ha'atzilus. This is the etzem ha'atzilus. V'giloi v'hamshachas ha'teira, and thus, the giloi and the hamshachas ha'teira, when the Torah was given and presented down into the world, his galus, that is his galus of an expression and a full presentation. Bechinas ho'atzmius da'atzilus. Of the atzmius of atzilus. In HaTorah, this is his galus atzmius. That's why Torah, this is called the tzel. It's true representative of the atzim of atzilus.
One second, so you're confused. Torah is called Tzelem because it's true representative of Etzem of Atzilus, or just like Etzem of Atzilus is true representative of what Lemailam and Atzilus, so So to Torah is true representative of Lemaila from Torah, from Beis, which is a Reis of Kuchabrichu. It's a Tzelem, it's a Tzura Atzmis from Lemaila.
We don't need to go any further. It's a representative of Chochmah Law, of Atzilus.
It is a Chochmah Law.
It came down from Chochmah Law down to us. It's a representative, it's a Gil of Chochmah Law. But it is still, it's Chochmah, Teilon Chochmah Nafkos.
You're saying that the Chochmah in Atzilus is a representative of a Chochmah Ilo, which is Lemaila of Atzilus.
No, Chochmah Atzilus, this is Chochmah Ilo. Torah is Chochmah Nafkos. Comes from Chochmah.
So it's
And Torah was given here below.
So we're not talking about Torah like Kemoshi Lemaila of Atzilus.
No.
The other way around, talking about how Torah comes down to us from Atzilus.
Right.
Okay.
So Arezi is Galus Bechina, so Atzmi is the Atzilus. This is Megala the Atzmi is Atzilus. And all of these continuing reference of the Atzmius is due to the special nature, special quality of Moichin. That in Moichin, in transition, nothing is lost. Even though it's on a completely different level. Like we point out in the Moshel of sight, that in sight, even though we are seeing it, it's a mamish of physical experience, but we are seeing it not, the reality of that experience is not the fact that we experience it, but the fact that it is a true presence. That's the experience there.
And that's the same as Torah.
This is Galus of Atzmius. Excuse me. Zehu ha-hischatshus. This is the hischatshus. This is the special novelty that was affected. The Yichud Ho'eli and the Matan Torah, Brias Ho'elam. Brias Ho'elam was also coming, Agil Elkus Milmayl. And then there was in for Matan Torah. Matan Torah was a novel type of presence of Elkus and Yichud than in the creation. What's novel about Matan Torah? Yichud El Matan Torah Al Brias Ho'elam over Brias Ho'elam. It's a completely novel thing. Shaharei. Okay, what do we need to explain? This needs to be explained because Shaharei Brias Vizhavas Ho'elam is the creation of the world. Hogam Kemei Ha'oras Atzilus is also from the Ha'or of Atzilus. Shezeho Bechinas HaKoyach Ho'eliki HaMahave. The Ha'oras Atzilus, this is the Koyach Ho'eliki that creates. The Atzilus Hu Elokus. Because Atzilus is Elokus. And thus the Koyach Ho'eliki of Atzilus is able to create. So therefore, creation also represents a koyach eliki of Atzilus. So what's the difference? Rak, except shezehu ha'oras Atzilus levad. That in the creation there is only the ha'or of Atzilus, showing what kind of koyach, what kind of ability there is in the oil of Atzilus. in the koich in the Lakusa Atzilus. Therefore, this is only ha'or of Atzilus, the creation element. The me'atzmius ha'or Atzilus. Why do we say that the creation is only a ha'or of Atzilus? Why can't we say that this is the etzem Atzilus? And the answer is the me'atzmius ha'or Atzilus, because from the etzem of the Atzilus, it is impossible that Metzias of the Nivroim should come to be from the etzem of the Atzilus. We'll discuss it in a moment. Kiyim rak mehaor chitzonis levad. It is from Oyer Atzilus, but from the Oyer Atzilus it is only from haor chitzonis that creation can come. So therefore, what's represented and recognized in the creation is only haor chitzonis of the Oyer Atzilus and the Atzmis. Ho'ed Atzilus, not the etzem Ho'ed. So we'll go through a couple of lines and then we'll put everything in perspective. Vehi ha'ora, this chitzonius ha'ora of the Oyer Atzilus. This is the ha'ora ha'bo'o alidei ha'parso that comes out as a result of the parso, of the curtain, of the separation between Atzilus and Biyah. That is between Atzilus and Biyah. She'ein zeh mehus eiro Atzilus. Because there is a parso, there is a separation, an interruption. Therefore, that is no longer mehus eiro Atzilus. It's no longer the mehus of the Eiro Atzilus. This also we will discuss in a moment. The Ba'atzilus Gufo, within Atzilus itself, Ein Zeh Mibchinas Atzmos Ho Atzilus. That oil that comes after the Parsa is not of the Bechina, does not qualify as being part of the etzem of Atzilus. Ki yim asher shayach lo eilamis, only that aspect within Atzilus that can relate to one. Derech prat the bechinas hamalchus. Okay, now we'll take a little break. What is...
Where did you stop here with Malchus of Atzilus?
Yeah, the Chlal and Bechinas HaMalchus, in the small parentheses, the Prat. Okay, I'm going to go back to these several lines that we read, because I would like to have some kind of reference, and then we can...
How did we start talking about Brias HaOlam? I just didn't catch the...
We need from Matan Torah.
Torah.
But why is Torah connected to Brias HaOlam?
Make a distinction.
What was...
Oh, it's a comparison.
Yeah, what was novelty in Torah versus Israel?
Well, what do you mean, the distinction?
Because Brias Olam came from Atzilus. Matan Torah didn't come from Atzilus in the same way.
It came from Atzilus also, but not in the same way.
Right. What does it mean, Yichud Elyon to Matan Torah?
I really don't understand. I just said we're going to try and discuss it.
Okay.
Is it going to help? Maybe break it down in little questions. So, Atzmius, that Atzmius or Atzilus. So we already kind of were able to identify the concept of Atzmius or Atzilus. That this is like the Moichi. One principle of an Atzmi, of an Etzem, is that the Etzem has a full presence within itself. It does not, its presence is not defined and identified by the fact that it has an effect outside of itself. It's meant an essence, a real presence. We have to remember the primary principle. And we always quote from the Rambam that the first principle is to know that there is a first being. A first being means, as we said many times, that the first is not non-being. There's a first being. What kind of being is this that it's on the first stage? This is a being that is an Atzmi. Atzmi. Because that everything was created. Because that everything was created by Elikim. Contrary to the way the world feels everything has been developed by a certain process. Therefore, in everything, like the Rambam says, there's a truth in everything. There's a godly truth in everything. This is the concept of Etzem. In everything there is what's called, what is Etzem Mehusa? Meaning to say, what did God create over here? What is the godly element in this? When we say what is the godly element in this, means that it is not something that has to maintain itself, like a goof, a body. A body is not an atzmi. A body cannot last a moment without being replenished. And it has to replenish itself, so to speak, with its own activity. It has to feed itself and so forth. And that means that it does not need to maintain, to do anything to maintain its presence. Why? Because there's a godly will that it should be. What maintains its presence? The godly will. Like we always said, that there is a structure of the house, and then there is the floor and the walls and the foundation of the earth. Ultimately, there's an etzem truth in this. What's the etzem truth? That Hashem supports everything, ablimo. Everything is held up by Hashem's will. There's an etzem. There's an essential truth in the fact that this cup stands on the table. Not just the precarious thing, the fact that there happens to be a table here. There's an essential truth in the reality of the world. What's the essential truth? This is the amitis imotzi. This is the godly presence in everything. This is what we quoted lately, Where the Pasuk says, "If Hashem lo yivne bayish of obnov beinu bay." If Hashem will not build a house, then the whole effort of building is to no avail. If Hashem will yishmeri shokad shen shokad shen. If Hashem will not guard the city, then the diligence of the watchman is to naught. Which means, yes, indeed, to bring it down to simple reality, we have to be very careful how we walk and that we do things in a careful and in a safe manner, and that we have to feed ourselves and we have to take care of our health and everything. But bottom line, what keeps everything going is what the Rebbeinu wants it to be. Which means that there is an essential truth in the world. What is the essential truth? The godly presence. This is the essence. So now, this godly presence, this essence, is recognized in the moichin of every madrega. The moichin is where the thing identifies what am I, who am I, and why am I here for. This is the moichin. This is what we point out, that prior to Adam Arisham's creation, the world was a totally insignificant presence. Because there was no etzem, there was no essential presence. The animals don't have an essential presence, their presence is all reactive. Adam came and he brought an essential presence into the world. Why? Because he came with moichin.
What did you say? Because what?
Because he was given moichin. Now, world. What is the definition of world? We discussed it many times. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that world the primary definition of world is that it is not an essence, that it consists of many pieces. It's a composite. And in simple terms, on the most basic level, it is what's called Zman U'Mokim. And what's Zman? Over Heber V'Yosit, the past, present, and future. What's Mokim? The 6 directions. There is not an essential truth in this. That's the definition of world, a composite of Zman U'Mokim. Zman U'Mokim is like the base, and everything in the world has one aspect or the other of Zman U'Mokim. Like we said many times, that knowledge that has not been acquired is not knowledgeable. It's not knowledge in the world. In the world, to know means having gone through the process of acquiring this knowledge. So it has a place in the Zman U'Mokim when it was acquired. That gives it reality. Now, the Oil Ha'atzilus its definition of Atzilus is Atzmi. It is an essential reality, not a procedural presence. So I'm jumping a little bit and we'll come back to this. This is what we're saying, that from Atzilus Gufa, there could not be a creation of world. Because this is not world. World cannot. If it comes from Atzilus Gufa, it's not world. What can create Metzius Nivroim? Only Ha'orach Hitzenis. Only an external Ha'orach. So we will identify this just for the moment as following way. There is a neshama in the guf alone. So in the brain, this is what he said. This is the etzem odom. This is the essential life element. In the foot, how can you tell that the foot is alive? When it walks, when it moves. In the brain, the union of life is an essential presence. It's a constant awareness. The foot, you can first tell that it's alive when it moves. This is how it's only the effect of life, not the essence of it. The truth is that the essence of life is present in the person throughout, but where is it manifest in the brain? In the foot, it's only the chitzonis is manifest. This is the meaning when saying that Nivroim could not be created from the etzem or Atzilus. Because Atzilus is mamash Ayin or Kibs. Nivroim, in order to be a Nivra, it has to go through this process of receiving and then processing. Not something that is an essential presence. That's what a Nivra. The Nivra, by definition, Nivra means Yesh Me'ayin. The Nivra, by definition, has to sense that here I am not, and here I am. Like we're saying, that what is knowledge? Knowledge means that there was a point when I didn't know, now I know. And that is the presence of a Nivra. Atzilus, which is an essential truth, omnipresent, cannot relate to Nivroim. In order that there should be Nivroim, it has to Chitzonis or Atzilus. Chitzonis means, Ha'orach Chitzonis means the effect of it, like we said, the effect of life on the foot, which becomes only recognized when the foot actually acts, moves. All right. Who is still with me here?
So Atzilus is in effect Ayin to all of the creation. Is that true?
Right. Elokus.
No.
It's an Atzmi.
But this is where Yesh Ayin happens from Atzilus to Bria.
Right.
Why are you explaining this to us?
I'm explaining to you is because that's what the Rebbe is telling me to explain it.
Well, in other words, this is coming in order to show us the history of what happens with Paltiel, with Torah.
Right. Right.
Torah came from the etzem of Atzilus.
Oh, that's it.
And the Bria cannot come from etzem because that's the
Only
life
from the
itself.
Chassidus.
It has to come from
That's
the Chitzonius.
That's exactly right.
The life itself.
Etzem of Atzilus is the life itself, the godliness itself.
Torah comes from Chochmah Atzilus. The Broim are from Chitzonius Atzilus. Our Chitzonius from Malchus. And I just tried and went in circles to explain what a Nivra is. This is nothing new, I mean, hopefully. And so that we can relate to it. A Nivra, by definition, does not have an essential presence. It's not Nivra. Like we said, the experience of a Nivra is that everything he has, he's acquired. This we discussed many times, that wealth, which is a real definitive presence, you can measure it with all that. If a person gets wealth without knowing how he got it, he can't relate to it. He doesn't really own it. Because to be in the world, it has to be through the process. Then it becomes real.
But you also said in the previous discussion that the Moichin, it seems like Moichin, even though these are Moichin of a Nivra, but they're drawing directly from the Shema, and the Shema is not exactly a Nivra in the same way. Is that true?
That's true. So the Moichin of a Nivra are relative to the Nivra. It's true that in Bria there is also Moichin, but it's a totally different Moichin than they are in Atzilus.
Even for a Yid with a Neshama.
Even for a Yid and a Neshama, with a Neshama. The Haraya, the Torah had to be given. Here, Lamata.
Hold on, you said
In other words, he wouldn't have gotten the Torah together with the Neshama.
Right. What? Avram is very upset with it. What?
You said yourself that Abishter put human being into the world. He changed the whole world. Why? Because he has this cognizance of reality.
There's the capacity.
Other Marishan utilized it.
Yeah. But he has only the capacity for it. Still, he has to develop it. Has to learn it.
Okay, another thing. It says in the Sefer Yitzir, it says Oilam Shon Nefesh. Alter Rebbe says the Oilam is only Mokam and Zman. When you stick Nefesh into it, it becomes a totally different ballgame. Just like you explained yourself.
still the nefesh, as it is present in the world, has a procedural requirement.
Meaning it's not automatic, you're saying.
It's not automatic. As I explained, that anything that's known automatically, it's not known.
So Adam Rishon, essentially, when he woke up from being created, he went through the whole process just very fast. And right away he called all the animals and gave them
That's
names.
right.
Okay.
He just opened his eyes, so
He figured everything out right away. It didn't took him
but
long time.
he figured it out. That's when he saw it.
Okay. All right.
If it wasn't like this, it would be like the little boy with the bells of Rebbe.
That's right. That's what our classic example. The Gemara says, Adam Rishon was able to see from one end of the world to the other. But he was able to see it. He didn't see it with closed eyes.
He was created like a 20-year-old man right away. He
Yeah,
was
well,
created
that's-
like a baby. It didn't take him 20 years, right?
Well, even
Yeah.
the Cain and Hevel were born after 20 years.
Yeah.
That's the point is he was able to see it. Seeing means that there is a process. That is a presence in the world. That and Atzilus do not correlate.
So what's being always said that the human being gives significance to the world is not by his presence itself, is when he's going to utilize his presence or because he's capable of.
Because he's capable.
That gives it already.
That gives the world, that's right, that itself gives the world a value. Now it's up to the human being to utilize it.
Even if he doesn't utilize it, it still has.
Even if it doesn't utilize it, it's still a presence. Like a human being, like we always say, a human being who is never drunk, lying in the gutter. He's not utilizing his human quality. And you're going to say, okay, you go.
Throw him with the garbage together.
I'm not going to do that. Because he still has that capacity. That he's still a human being. He's still a godly creation of a human being.
That's a tzelem.
Huh?
Tzelem.
That's a tzelem. Tzelem order.
So there's actually a mila to having to get to know something, as opposed to knowing it automatically.
In the world, absolutely.
But it's not just in the world, because the world was created for a reason, but Kabbalah.
Okay, that you're going beyond my ability to know. But in the world, David says that's what it is.
Again, this my love coming to know something versus directly knowing is right?
In the world, that's the only thing that has value.
Because that's
So
the
that becomes
operating.
the presence in the world.
That's the way things work here.
That's what's present in the world. That's what's real in the world.
That's what's real and present in the world. Instantaneous things are kind of not.
For instance, the behemoths who have midas tavis,
doesn't
the
count.
nesher,
Right.
that represents some kind of a gilui lakus in the world. Nothing. It's nothing.
But it
It's
seems
instinctive. It's not. It's insignificant.
Yet it seemed like Chokhmah was like sight, a very direct apprehension, a very direct cognition, not procedural.
But no, this procedure. It's direct. This is the phenomenal quality of Chokhmah. That even though it's procedural, it's also in a keli. It's only like we say moichin. But it is because of the beetle, because of its purity, like the eye.
Yeah.
Nothing is lost in the procedure, in the process.
Oh, it's a very clear channel, yet it's still a channel.
But it's a channel.
And therefore it's real in the world.
And therefore it's real world. And that's why, this is something which I think I once said, I'm not going to elaborate, this is why we're able to close our eyes, so that sight will be real.
So that what?
Sight would be real.
Sight would be real.
Mm-hmm.
With closed eyes.
What?
With closed eyes.
Not with closed eyes, with open eyes.
It's not constant.
All right.
This
Good. I'm glad that.
this
oh,
that
wow.
Jonathan Eibishitz was doing this thing with the chicken.
Right.
So this was taking something that really was a reality, but he was kind of playing around and saying it's only a sign for reality. It's only in other words, the chicken really, the two legs, it's a reality. The mother saw it clearly, but he was fooling around and he was saying, oh, maybe it's like only like you know.
Well,
What was I was
of
trying.
course,
We were trying to figure out this story.
the story that we brought is for the purpose to see that that of course this was a child's thing.
Yeah. But what?
That at a certain level, we're told that ha'ora is only noticed when it is active.
Like the leg is only alive. You only see that it's alive when it's walking.
When it's walking. And it comes to action when it is walking.
Masha and Ken, this was in contrast to Etzem.
Why don't they say we see that the foot is alive when it hurts, even if it's not walking?
That's the same thing.
This is like Bria versus Atzilus.
That's exactly the same thing. And we should never have that. Should have only the walking part.
This is like Bria versus Atzilus, right?
Yeah.
Bria you only see when there's some kind of activity or some kind of.
That's what the creation is. All right, Chevra, very good. I thought I am running on a detached locomotive.
Good.
Okay, very good. Have a good day.
Well, that's your title for today, Yona.
Could be.